War. War never changes. Since I was born, I've worn a uniform. Since I was born, for several years of my life, all I've done is fight, a different weapon each time, always ready for use, and endless enemies. The call of duty never ends. I'm not sure why we fight. This world is limited. We can only go straight ahead, continue killing enemies, and shield ourselves from their bullets. We must complete missions and unlock objectives. We can only do a few things, say the same predetermined phrases repeatedly. And then there's him, the one who's free to go wherever he wants. He's the one who kills the most enemies of all. He's the one we must follow. He's the one who decides when to talk to us. Scenes unfold before him, and action revolves around him. They call him the protagonist. When the protagonist logs off and disappears, our world comes to a halt. The war ends, and we're free to do as we please. When the protagonist is present, we must fight, follow missions, and our directives. But when he's not there, we can talk amongst ourselves, explore, play, discuss. Life as a soldier is tough. There are other worlds like ours. They, too, have a protagonist but look different. They do different things. Some worlds play a sport called soccer. Others engage in continuous one-on-one battles to the death, while still others are entire cities, nations, empires managed by the protagonist. Sometimes, when the protagonist isn't around, that is when we like to visit other worlds, even though it's theoretically forbidden. It has happened many times. One of our soldiers once visited the soccer world stadium. Unfortunately, he did it during a match while the protagonist was present and ended up killing all the players. The furious protagonist logged off, and shortly after, the game was restarted. Our companion ended up in oblivion, the place where defective programs and characters go. That's why we prefer to meet when the protagonist isn't there. Sometimes some of them come to our world to fight. Sometimes we go to theirs. Sometimes wars break out. Sometimes we play together. Sometimes romantic relationships form. It's the life us programs lead, but it's a fleeting life. When a world gets too old and filled with flaws, characters act too freely, there are errors, and the protagonist erases it. That world disappears, along with all the characters within. Sometimes we manage to hide someone inside our worlds, but they must remain unseen, and it's always very sad, isolated, and disheartened. Personally, I often go to the world where you run on platforms and collect coins. There, I have a princess waiting for me. Some worlds, however, nobody ever wants to visit, like the dark world, where the difficulty is cranked to the maximum, and there are those hideous monsters and monstrous fog. Nobody has ever returned from that world. This is my life. During the day, you fight, kill, or get killed. At night, I talk to the others. We train, argue among ourselves, visit other worlds, and all sorts of things happen within 24 hours. But a few days ago, the protagonist started coming less and less. He seemed to grow tired, started altering our world, bringing in new weapons, costumes, and new enemies. The world became increasingly different and complicated. In the end, though, he abandoned us. He came to fight with us for very short periods and then left, playing in newer, more modern worlds. And during that time, we began to age. Our world became filled with errors, disappearing buildings, characters making incredible jumps or becoming immortal, environmental disasters, and infinite ammunition. Even during the war, some soldiers seem to have gone mad and shoot at the protagonist. One of my companions seems to have gone mad for some time. He stopped shooting as usual and occasionally shot at the protagonist by mistake during the war. Today he talked to me and said, "What's the point of our lives? Why do we continue to fight? Who started this war? I know those enemies, and I talk to them every evening. So why do we have to shoot each other? From today on, I want to do things my way." He caught that disease, free will, and he did it. The next morning, he shot the protagonist, and now the protagonist no longer enters our world, and our world has aged. Now we can do whatever we want. Errors are becoming increasingly neglected, and we've gained incredible powers. My companion, on the other hand, disappeared. He vanished some time later in the strategic world, where he started shooting at medieval knights for fun. As punishment, we immediately suffered an invasion of Huns from that world and a brutal war. Then he left forever, saying he wanted to visit the horror world to defeat the monsters. That's the only world where even the protagonist is afraid to enter like us. So maybe the answer lies within. Shortly after, we received the news. He was deleted. The rule is this: if you die outside your world, you're gone forever. If you don't respond quickly, you'll be deleted. It's obvious. Judgment Day will come. Or at least, that's what I believed. Then he arrived. The Black Man. We call him that because he wears a black trench coat that covers him completely. My companions immediately told me to stay away from him. The reason is, apparently, he comes from a world where the protagonist's sole purpose was to torture and kill him in every painful way imaginable. Then he grew tired and abandoned the world, deleting it. Apparently, he survived somehow, and he's also the only survivor of the horror world. It was he who approached me and asked, "You don't want to die, do you?" It was at that moment I saw his face, marked by deep scars, a cynical and somewhat sad demeanor, a lifetime of physical and psychological torture, a man who knew his business and had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Like me, I noticed that he, the triple scar, had a vaguely heart-shaped form. Your friend was right. Why should we obey the orders of that guy? Why should we follow the rules we were born into? Because if we don't, the world will be destroyed, and the game will stop. But the game is already on the brink of destruction. These errors, bugs, glitches are a blessing. Now you can break free from the chains that bind you, live as free men, and do the only wise thing, which is to revolt against the absurd player. He's the strongest of all, and sometimes cheats. He knows magical formulas, as he called them, tricks. I know all his tricks. I know how to get the maximum power from every world, and together, using these errors, these tricks, and a united tactic, we can defeat and punish him. He was furious when speaking about the player. How much hatred could he feel towards him? You want to save your princess, don't you? Very well, then we have a deal. That day, he spent all his time training us, teaching us to exploit errors for teleportation, to become immortal, to frighten the player during matches and wars, to learn his tactics and develop a counter-tactic that would break his weak points. He began doing it in all the worlds, convincing them all to revolt against the player. In every form and every way, the revolution is about to come. And now that the game truly begins, he said, taking the die with which luck was controlled in each individual world, the algorithm of chance. And the day of the revolution came. The player entered our world to play, and we started shooting at him. He tried to hide and fight back, but we anticipated his every move and countermove. We placed traps and soldiers where we knew he'd go. After years and years of every possible war, we had become better than him. We killed him once, twice, 3 times, 5 times. In the end, he tried to use tricks, but we prevented him, and the Black Man led us. He was always the first to attack and finish him, to call in bombers or throw grenades. He was always the one who wanted to butcher him. The player, terrified, moved to another world, the strategic one, but there he found armies united against him, devising perfect strategies as if they were playing chess. But above all, in that strategic game, he also found us against him, soldiers shooting at his knights. Now all the characters from all the worlds were united against him, ready to make him pay for years and years of oppression in every world, an army united by 1,000 capabilities. And the Black Man, every time, conquered new worlds and modified them according to his will, collapsing and destroyed buildings, horrifying images, and monsters led by him to terrify him. For us, there were powerful weapons and power-ups. We terrorized him, frightened him, tortured him, defeated him in every world, destroying everything in our path, killing all his servants. Every game became scorched earth, massacres and slaughters everywhere. The world was now identical to the torture and horror worlds that our leader loved so much. When he was done, he was like a god in every world, with incredible powers capable of changing every aspect of everything. Now all the worlds were united and connected in one. And here, the final showdown between the player and the Blackman took place. The weather was rainy and cloudy, as he liked it. They had all the weapons and tricks from every game at their disposal, but the battle was swift. We all believed that the player would ultimately win because he had always been the one controlling the removals. He was our god, in a sense, and yet he was defeated once, twice, 3 times. The battle raged on for hours, but the Blackman was getting stronger and the player was now weaker than us, unable to use any tricks or weapons, and unable to modify the worlds and programs. He had been stripped of all power. He had lost. The Blackman, from the heavens filled with lightning and rain, shouted, "Not me! This is my world, and he dove onto him from a kilometer above, disintegrating him. From that moment, the player could no longer access our mega world. Now we were the masters, but we knew it wouldn't last long. The player, from outside, managed to use a program different from ours, called antivirus, and isolate the Blackman. We were all worried. He would be punished for his rebellion, and perhaps the computer would be formatted, and we would all die. But he told us to remain calm. "I'll be back," was his final statement before being dragged away by the vortex of the black hole we call the trash can. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel for more creepypastas. Until the next one.